So I'm Nicole Strong. I'm the dietitian with the Cardiac Rehab Program, and today we'll be looking at heart healthy eating. So I'll just pull up the slides here. So when it comes to heart healthy eating, there's quite a lot to think about. So today we'll be looking at heart healthy eating, just a general idea. We'll look at dietary fats, because I find that tends to be a topic that often comes up when we're thinking about heart healthy eating. Another hot topic that I've noticed pop up over the last couple of years tends to be carbohydrates, and there's a lot of confusion around that word. So we'll look at different types of foods and how they can support our health, but we'll also look at added sugars as part of that. And then from there, we'll go on to looking at some other key points that we can use to help maintain our overall health. So when it comes to heart healthy eating, there are many different factors to consider. So I tried to summarize it the best I could, as heart healthy eating is eating a variety of minimally processed foods with very little added salt, added fat, and added sugar. So what I mean by that would be really having an awareness of where food companies might have added quite a bit of extra added salt, added fat, and added sugar to our foods and foods that we might use. We can definitely add a little bit of these things to our foods for flavoring and texture and during the cooking process, but really having an awareness of how things show up. So ideally, meals and snacks will include a good variety of different types of foods with a strong base in vegetables and fruits, using some whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, lean meats, fish, seafood, and dairy products. So again, we're looking at a good variety of different types of foods that we can get some benefit from. So specifically looking at fats, there's actually different types of fats in our foods. So there's trans fats, saturated fats, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats. And one thing that I do encourage you to keep in mind as we move forward, and keep in mind no matter what food that we're looking at, if it contains fat, so whether it's a piece of meat, eggs, fish or seafood, olives, avocados, different types of oils. No matter what food we're looking at that has fat in it, it actually has different types of fats, just in different amounts. So we'll look at these different types of fats, how they can benefit our body, and what types of foods are stronger in the different types of fats. So we'll start off with trans fats. So what I mean by this type of fat, we're actually talking about man-made trans fats. They're actually shown to have no health benefit whatsoever. And for every 2% more calories we take in from this type of fat, our heart risk can actually go up by about 23%. So the food sources, again, this is where I do encourage looking at ingredient lists if you have access to them. It would be double checking if there's any ingredients with the word hydrogenated. Say hydrogen margarine, hydrogenated oil, partially hydrogenated oils. Those would be some key ingredients that would indicate that there's this type of trans fat in our food. So it might also include foods that tend to have those ingredients. It would be some of the deep fried foods, fast foods, candies, chocolate bars, some store-made baked goods. Again, it really depends on the ingredients. So double checking the ingredient list to see if you notice any ingredients that might show that there's trans fats in that food. Now, just to be aware, there is a little bit of naturally occurring trans fats, usually in the tissues of some grass-fed animals. And this type of trans fat that's naturally occurring does not affect our heart risk. So it doesn't have the same risk as man-made trans fats. And if you wanted to double check if it was naturally occurring or not, double check the ingredient list. And if you don't see any ingredients that make you think there's trans fats in that food, then you know for sure it's naturally occurring. Then we've got saturated fats. So this type of fat, historically they thought would increase our heart risk, but there's actually no evidence and no research that supports that it actually increases our heart risk. Now again, just do be aware that in a large amount, it might increase inflammation or irritation in our body tissues, or it might affect the cholesterol levels in our blood work. So again, that's only in a large amount. In a small amount, it does not increase that risk. So food sources that tend to be higher in saturated fats, again, they do have the mono and poly, just smaller amount and larger amount of saturated. Would be things like cheese, full fat dairy products, fattier cuts of meat, so meat that has more marbling in it, processed meats, so sausages, deli meats, because quite often they'll have the ground meat and then some extra fat added to it, which tends to be some of the saturated fats. So again, keeping an eye out for those ones. Polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats. These are the types of fats that have an even stronger protective effect on our body. By including foods that are, again, stronger in mono and poly and a little bit lower in saturated, can reduce our heart risk by about 15%. So that might include different types of oils. Again, a lot more research around olive oil itself at this point. But other oils do have different profiles and can have different uses for cooking and food preparation as well. Other food sources would be nuts and seeds, flaxseed, almonds, walnuts, peanuts, pistachios. Again, the list can go on. Sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, lean cuts of meat, wild game, fish and seafood, and olives and avocados are the only fruits that I'm aware of that contain these types of fats. Just to touch on fish and seafood and wild game, those tend to be the stronger sources of omega-3 fatty acids, which aren't as available in other foods. So that would be any of the salmon family, any of the trout family, mackerel, sardines, and wild game. So those tend to be the stronger sources of omega-3 fatty acids. So when it comes to dietary fats, try to include a variety of plant-based fats, which might include some of the different oils. Again, a lot more research around olive oil itself, different nuts and seeds, using a variety of lean meat, fish, and seafood sources. Again, those also have mono and polyunsaturated fats in them. For fattier cuts of meat, cheese, full fat dairy products, again, just being aware how much we might be using by the end of the day and really being mindful of what some of the portions might be. And keep in mind overall, portions around us tend to be quite a bit larger than recommended, and they have grown over the years as well. So having an awareness of what some of the portions might be. Again, if I was to use an example of, say, a restaurant size maybe steak, quite often they'll serve an 8-ounce steak, whereas recommended would be probably closer to about 3-4 ounces, that type of idea. Or say decacards and a half, or even say, again, everybody's hand is different sizes, but sure to think, say, center of the hand, so fingers and thumb cut off, and just the center part. Could be a quick way to keep portions in mind for a cut of meat. Then carbohydrates. So carbohydrates, it actually includes a few different things within the same topic. So carbohydrates include starch, sugar, so whether it's naturally occurring, so say if you had an apple or an orange, the sugar that's just naturally in that fruit itself, or it could be added sugar, so white sugar, honey, syrup that we might be adding to foods. And carbohydrates also includes fiber. So our body actually uses the sugar and starch to give our body energy. So the key when we're thinking about supporting our health is thinking about what types of carbohydrate containing foods are we consuming. So the most protective foods would be vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, all of those kind of support our health the most. But I know it says whole grains, but whole grains, vegetables, fruits, legumes, nuts, and seeds, all of those foods actually help reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, can help manage it, reduce the risk of cancer, help with managing cholesterol and blood pressure levels. So all of these foods can really give a lot of support to the body overall. And interesting, the whole grains, so ideally kind of closer to the grain, usually the stronger it is nutrient-wise, would be different types of grains like whole grain, oats, barley, quinoa, different types of rices, wild rice, brown rice, red rice, black rice. Again, there's a number of different ones. Yeah, buckwheat, barley, farro, pre-K, there's quite a few different ones, including a small serving of that within our day can actually reduce our heart risk by about 20 to 30%. So we're looking at, again, quite a strong protective effect for the body. For fiber, every 7 grams more fiber we take in, we can actually reduce our heart risk by about 9%. Overall, research shows that Canadians take in an average about 10% out of what's recommended for the day for fiber. So if we can get it closer to closer to the recommendations, we can actually reduce our heart risk by about 24%. So sources of fiber, again, that will include vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes and pulses, so the dried beans, peas, lentils, that type of idea. Nuts and seeds. Again, the key is to meet our needs, thinking about all the different types of foods we could include in our day. So it wouldn't be focusing on just one type of food. Then one to really be aware of is added sugar. So added sugar is sugar that we might add to a food or a food company might add to a food or drink during processing or food preparation. So this could include white sugar, brown sugar, honey, syrup, molasses, dextrose, sucrose, fructose, glucose, maltose, raw sugar, coconut sugar, beet sugar, cane sugar. Again, the list I'm sure could go on. You might notice that it also says fruit juice. I would also include fruit juice or pop even in this example. The reason why fruit juice is there, and even if it's all natural fruit juice or even freshly squeezed, is because it actually acts just like added sugar in the body. It's so concentrated. If we were to take a small glass of juice, say about 4 ounces, or half a measuring cup, so a small amount, it would take probably about roughly 3 oranges to get that much juice. 4 if it's not too juicy. If we were to double the size, say a 1 cup serving, 250 mils or 1 cup measuring cup for cooking or baking. Again, that's quite a small glass. If we were to squeeze oranges to get that juice, that would be about 5-6 oranges worth of juice in that cup. And when we drink it, we'd be drinking about 6 oranges worth of juice, of sugar coming into the body all at once. And it really doesn't take too much time for that to absorb into our body. And that's not looking at what we might do the rest of the day. So it can have quite a large effect on the body. Whereas if we're to eat an orange, we might eat maybe 1 or 2, and that would be about it for our day. We'd be getting everything that the whole fruit would have to offer. The fiber, the nutrients, and it would take quite a long time for the body to digest it in comparison. So a much different effect on our body. But again, something to really be aware of. So unfortunately in Canada, they do list sugar on the nutrition facts table, but unfortunately they don't specify if that's natural sugar from a whole food ingredient or if it's added sugar. So we can't actually tell what type of sugar they're talking about on the label or on the nutrition facts table. Where you would have to check to see if there's any sugar added into a food item would be looking at the ingredient list. If in the ingredient list, if you see any words that indicate there's any added sugar, then you know for sure sugar has been added. Unfortunately, we won't know how much if that food item has some naturally occurring sugar as well. So the recommendations for added sugar, so whether we're adding it or a food company has added it, would be 6 to 9 teaspoons or less per day for a healthy diet. So really having an awareness of where it might be showing up, whether we're adding it, a food company might be adding it, if it's in our food or fluid, or things like baking as well. So you might have noticed so far that I do mention quite a bit thinking about variety, using different types of foods to meet our needs. One of the underlying thoughts as well is not just thinking about the different fats, the different benefits from the different types of foods, but also thinking there's different vitamins and minerals in our foods. They're all built a little different from each other. And vitamins and minerals actually contribute to every single body function. So if we're to think about our heart, it will contribute to how our heart beats, our heart rate, the muscle contraction and relaxation, so exactly how the heart functions, balancing fluid in our body, keeping the blood flowing. So a lot of different really important pieces when we're thinking about the heart. Not only does our food contain vitamins, minerals, but they also have antioxidants and phytochemicals. So antioxidants, some of them are vitamins, minerals, but there are components that are in our food that actually protect the plant or animal and the cells in their body or in the tissue from breaking down or being damaged. It can also help repair if damage has happened at the cellular level. So again, when we eat those foods, it protects the cells in our body as well from breaking down, being damaged, or repairing if damage has occurred. Phytochemicals are specifically in plants only. So whether it's vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, that type of idea. And as part, there are chemical compounds that are found in plants that actually protect the plant cells themselves. And again, when we eat them, then it protects our body cells. You can kind of pick them out. They're how they might show up in a plant would be they might contribute to different colors in the plant, flavors, odors, and if you're to think of maybe say garlic, it has a specific taste and a really specific flavor, even smell. Lots of that are some of the phytochemicals. Or say the taste of broccoli, or as you cook cabbage, you'll notice a little bit of a sulfury kind of smell. All of that is because of different phytochemicals. So when we eat those foods, we're actually taking in those chemicals, and they're providing a protective effect for our body. So all different types of plants can offer different types of protection as well. And lots of them have up to thousands of different chemicals like this in our body, or in those foods that we would then also take in. So where are antioxidants, phytochemicals, vitamins, and minerals found? Again, phytochemicals are specifically in plants only, but antioxidants and vitamins, minerals are found in both plant and animal-based foods. Again, each one shows up differently as well. So it's showing up in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes and pulses, nuts and seeds, meat, fish, eggs, cheese, yogurt. So again, we're getting benefits not just of the different fats, but of also some of the vitamins, minerals, as well as antioxidants in those foods. Plant-based oils, again, a lot more research around olive oil, but we do get benefit from some of the others. Teas and broths, again, nutrients, whether it's a bone broth or different vegetables and spices, as it simmers, some of the nutrients come out of the tissues of the vegetables, fruits, or bones into the broth itself. When we use or either drink or use it as ingredients, as we eat it, we're consuming those nutrients as well. And similar idea, herbs and spices can be a great way to add a lot of taste and flavor to our foods, but they can also offer different benefits as well. So if we're to think about your meals and snacks, do you notice if there's any foods that we maybe talked about that you already use? Is there a variety of different foods and fluids that you might use that do support your health? Or maybe there's some foods that you could explore including, whether it's more often or introducing into your diet. So these are just a few ideas that I like to use to kind of help maintain a good variety within my diet. Again, just a collection of ideas. There's many more ideas on top of these ones. And any other ideas you can think of on top of this, definitely feel free to use them. So dicing up vegetables. I mentioned onions, carrots, and celery, but literally any vegetable can fit into this idea. I just happen to tend to have those ones on hand fairly often. But dice up vegetables and mix them into rice or whole grains. And then I still try and aim to have additional vegetables on the side as well. So an extra side dish of vegetables. And that can really ensure that there's a really strong base of nutrients coming in to that dish. You could also use frozen vegetables for that, or even canned vegetables for that idea. You could include vegetables and fruits with every meal and snack, and that'll really ensure that there's a really strong base by the end of the day. You could add frozen or canned vegetables to soups or side dishes. If it's canned vegetables, just give them a quick rinse if they have salt added, and then from there you can use the vegetables to add into things. You could add fruit to yogurt, whether it's a fruit cup, frozen fruit, fresh fruit. Again, it could even be things like applesauce or pureed fruit. You could add it into yogurt to give a lot of flavor, but also some of the extra nutrients. You could add nuts and seeds into stir fry. You could add nuts and seeds into the yogurt and fruit mix. You could cook rice, bulgur, barley, buckwheat, or any grain with a bit of broth. Ideally, no salt added broth if it's store-bought. Now this idea is more for baking, so if kind of thinking around the lines of, say, pancakes, muffins, maybe loaves, that type of idea. You can replace a third of what they call for flour in a recipe with quick or old-fashioned oats. And that does add a little bit of texture. So if you're not looking for the extra texture, you could just blend the oats in a blender and that'll make flour. And then from there, add in about a third of what the flour calls for, or what it calls for flour in the recipe. So you're using like a wheat flour and then some oats. You can also do a similar idea by substituting, say, a quarter of a cup or a quarter of what they call for the flour with ground flaxseed or an oat bran, or different grains like that as well. Wheat germ, psyllium husk, again, the list can go on. You could use ground meat in replacing half or even the whole amount for like beans, peas, legumes, substituting half of it or the whole amount into a dish. I find that can work really well for most ground meat dishes. So tacos, shepherd's pie, burritos, different noodle dishes, or even different types of sauces you might put on different dishes. I have had quite a few clients that really enjoy shepherd's pie made that way. Or they'd even use their usual shepherd's pie recipe, rinse a can of lentils and just throwing it right in as they're cooking the meat. Then it can add a lot of taste and flavor and some great texture and nutrients to a dish. And you could do a similar idea by even mixing that into some of the whole grains. So thinking about getting a good variety of different types of foods in our day, that's where I find the plate method can be quite useful. So thinking about a strong basis in vegetables and fruits. Again, different types of grains, so a quarter of the plate. Within this group, I also do actually put potato. So in the slide, potatoes kind of with the vegetables, but I'd actually put it with the grains, just because it offers similar amount of starch within that group, or as other items in that group. And then you'll notice quarter of the plate, we've got different types of proteins. So again, thinking as each meal comes up in our day, trying to make sure a source of protein shows up with our meals, but also that we're using different types of foods for our proteins, whether it's meat, fish, eggs, nuts and seeds, yogurt, cheese, cottage cheese, tofu, fish or seafood, different cuts of meat. Again, there's quite a few to choose from. So ultimately, trying to use a variety of foods on a daily basis, or even thinking throughout the day, using both plant and animal-based fats, trying to include a strong base in vegetables and fruits, whole grains, legumes, pulses, nuts and seeds, lean animal products, yogurt, fish, seafood. Again, moderation, so really keeping in mind the portion, but also how much adds up throughout the day for some of the higher saturated fat cuts of meat, cheese, or full fat dairy products. I'm trying to select foods with lower amounts of added sugar and a very small amount or no man-made trans fats. So I listed a couple of other resources. There's Pulse Canada, and as well, it's not on the slide, but pulse.org. Those are two different websites that have about 5 or 6 different cookbooks you could actually download, and they have different ideas on how to include beans, peas, and lentils in different types of recipes. And anything from dips to casseroles, soups, and even desserts. There's unlockfood.ca, which has a lot of nutrition information on different topics, as well as some recipes. And similar idea for Canada's Food Guide and the Heart and Stroke Association. And then I also included the Old Ways website, which is not necessarily a website, a health-related website, but it's a website that does have a lot of information on how to cook and prepare whole grains. So if you're interested in exploring that, that would be a great spot to look. So that's about it for a really good summary on heart healthy eating. If you do get any questions, feel free to give a call. The phone number is 684-6783. And it'll either be myself or it'll be Leanne. She'll be taking over for the year. And always welcome to review your own food intake if there's any spots that we can make some adjustments, or if you want to go through and look at some other resources as well. Again, definitely don't hesitate to give a call or send an email. Thank you. Have a great day.